TV shows in Hollywood, cinema, history, books, but no Medal of Honor.
That is the, I don't know if dilemma would be the correct word to describe this. I think it goes deeper than being a dilemma. It's an embarrassment, I think, for all military service people to be witness to this type of an atrocity. That's one of the reasons why we have the Colonel with us today. I would defer to her to provide you with that background, and for where I can contribute to her statement, I will certainly pitch in.
Ma'am, can you tell us more about this? What's going on with this effort to get him the recognition he deserves?
Well, initially, he did have a frigate named after him, but that frigate was decommissioned. Mm-hmm. So consequently...
And talk a little bit closer to the mic so we can so the audience can hear a little bit better.
Is that better?
That's a lot better, much
Okay.
better. So we can push this a little bit further. There we go.
And so that frigate got deactivated, and from that point up until now, the current status is that there will be another vessel named after him, and that is to occur sometime like in 2032, something of that sort. And that will be the type of vessel that is commissioned under Gerald Ford.
Okay.
So what's happening right now is that there's nothing in existence right now with the name Dorie Miller. Nothing whatsoever. And it is a travesty because of what he did, sacrificed his life, and there is nothing presently in existence to honor the fact that if it had not been for him on that vessel saving over greater than 100 plus soldiers and sailors, shall I say, on that vessel, then what would have happened is that the Japanese probably could have just totally taken over everything.
He shot down several planes. So give us a story about Dorie Miller. He was a cook because African Americans at the beginning of the war could not serve in military combat roles. We couldn't hold rifles and learn how to operate guns or artillery or fly planes, but later on that became a reality because we showed our courage and showed what we were capable of doing. This cook did what on the day of Pearl Harbor, no less?
On the day of Pearl Harbor, he was told that he needed to come up to the deck and he needed to help Lieutenant, I can't think of his name right now, Mervyn. He needed to help him because he had been shot and his abdomen, it appeared, had started to eviscerate. He was having some trouble there and he was bleeding. So therefore, he could give, his commanding officer could give the commands, but Dorie's attention was needed in order to orchestrate this, okay? And that's exactly what he did. He had never received any skills in firing a .50 caliber, but I thought what was interesting is that prior to his coming to Pearl Harbor, he had served on another vessel called the Pyro. And on that vessel, he actually witnessed people using these ballistic missiles and things to tackle down or to bring down planes and various flying objects. And I felt that because he had witnessed this, that he indeed had gained or learned from what he witnessed, and he applied it. And he continued to shoot down these missiles coming in from the Japanese bombers overhead. And the amazing thing is that only a little bit over 100 people lost their lives, but the masses of people, greater than 300, did not. They were saved. Their lives were savaged and everything. And that is the beauty of it, is because he had no training, but yet he knew what to do, and he did it forcefully. Also, he had the body build and the structure. He had the build to be able to handle that heavy equipment and use it skillfully, as though he had maybe handled it before or witnessed other people his size doing it. So he knew exactly what positions to take in order to bring those Japanese ammunition.
Those kamikaze planes and all the Japanese bombers down.
Exactly.
And and the thing was, he was a cook. He was trained as a cook, not as a gunnery personnel.
That's correct.
So he was able to come out of the basically the basement of the ship. The hull of the ship down in the basement, came up, saw his commanding officer bleeding to death, took command to go and man a 50 caliber rifle machine gun, and took down, some people say 3, some people say 6, but arguably probably shot down more planes himself than any other person that day.
He did.
Number 2, where were the other sailors? Why weren't they at their station doing what he had to do as a cook?
Well, what I understand is that he was told to be there with his commanding officer to support him, because the commanding officer was needed in order to give the directions to everybody on board the ship as to what he needed them to do.
Wow.
Okay. And so when it came to the part about taking this weapon, he took it according to what is said, and he skillfully positioned himself and took down those various Japanese aircraft with no pain, it sounded like. He just easily did it. That's why I felt that because of his prior experience on the pyro, that he was able to do so because he had witnessed others. And there's things that you learn vicariously just by looking at other people, watching their moves, their stance. And I felt like he had gained some of that. And then with his body build and his structure, he had the power to bring those things down and to handle that heavy equipment.
And I remember in basic training, I shot a 60 caliber machine gun, and that's a 60 caliber machine gun. We're talking about a 50 cal aircraft carrier gun. That
Exactly.
60 cal, which is much lighter than that 50 cal, is hard to learn. It's not easy to learn. That's something that takes time to try to control the recoil, to try to make sure you're on target. And back then, I don't even know if they had tracers that you could use to try to hit your target.
I doubt it.
So that's amazing.
Yes, it was.
And on your your first try to get up there and be on pressure, you're shooting for your life.
Yes. Sean, if I may, I want to make sure that we clarify that Dorie was not Mr. Miller's real name.
Right. Yeah.
No.
Right.
It was really Doris. And I understand that the Pittsburgh courier of Pittsburgh is the one who saw it and thought that it was a misprint, and they started calling him Dorie. But he was also the heavyweight champion, boxing champion, which was the result of his size, skill, and agility, which further added to his ability to be so mobile and active on that day in lifting people. Now, the first person that he picked up when he went on deck was the captain of the ship, actually.
Okay.
Moved him to a safer location. He died, but still he got the Congressional Medal of Order. He didn't do anything but get wounded.
Right, and that's the thing. A lot of people, I think there was more than one, wasn't there, on that ship that got the Medal of Honor?
I might have been, but I know for
he
certain.
got a Medal of Honor for dying on the ship.
Yes.
He did.
Yeah,
He
that's
did.
right. That's right. That's right.
And I want to correct myself too, because what happened, it was only 106 people that died, I'm sorry, only 106 out of 1,541 crewmen that were
Wow.
on that ship.
So saved over
So
1,000
that's
lives.
outstanding.
Yes.
Outstanding.
Yes, it was.
Yes. And so hopefully this effort, because it's been a campaign for decades to get this man the Medal of Honor. Hopefully this effort to recommission a ship under his name, which he rightfully deserves, will get that conversation going again.
And it is going to be an aircraft carrier, a
Wow.
large vessel. As you mentioned, this started back in the 40s with the Digg brothers out of Detroit, and it has gone on and on and on with more folk getting involved with trying to get this done. We have people, a former congressman out of New York, DiGiuliano, and I know I'm butchering his name, but he was a friend of Mickey Leland. They pursued getting the first Congressional Medal of Honor for a black veteran from World War I, and he has been successful in pursuing that same cause for other black veterans, and this is going to be, he has said, his last effort for this. We did have Congressional Representative Bernice Johnson, who was a vanguard for this effort, but she has retired, and I haven't been able to.
Eddie Bernice.
Yes,
Eddie
right,
Bernice.
out of Dallas. She is from Waco, Texas, which is where Dorie Miller was from, and we are trying to get more involved with the pursuit of this. We didn't get the recognition we thought was going to come while Obama was there. We're still scratching every damn where as to why he didn't move on that. But bottom line is that the fight goes on. We understand what needs to be done, and it's people, such as Colonel Booker, that's going to help us sustain our forward thrust in this direction.
Well, what I wanted to share is the type of carrier.
Before we're running out of time. Let's move on. I want to get to this one thing
Okay.
before we get out of time. Rush Home program. What is that all about?
It's a PSD program.
Okay.
I signed up for it about 3 years ago. It is a more aggressive means of addressing PTSD. It is something that I had been asking for over at Jesse Brown, which I feel the group therapy sessions that I was going through were just clown sessions, people talking about what took place. Hell, we know what took place. My question was always, what are you doing now?
Right.
We survived. We're here. We know what they did to us, how we've been treated. What are you doing now? And I went to the director of Jesse Brown, and you all have had the director on, many times, and it was the result of me wanting something more positive that was going to add to me understanding my efforts right now to do something with whatever amount of time that I have left. Discovered this program over at Rush. They got $40 million
Wow.
from the Road Home program.
That's
$40 million.
Wow.
That's correct.
And they're refusing to utilize this program that goes around the country. Only one like it. They're refusing to come to you all and use you as a conduit to get the message out, to explain what services are available. Now, I have challenged them and told them, look, if you don't change this, I'm going to bring some veterans over here, and I'm going to picket your ass. And I ain't playing. If I can't get nobody to go, I'll go by myself to dramatize this ignorance. I think it is a very ignoble act on their part to be doing something like this. I think it's arrogance, it's racist, and I'm, through the grace of God, my understanding of what God is all about, I'm going to try to do something about it. And I want to thank you for this time for allowing me to share this. And I want to also add, I like it. My therapist has got me writing, coming in. That's a part of my therapy. He's got me writing, bringing stuff into him, making me explain to him what I did since the last time where I promised I was going to have some things done. That's what so many of the veterans need right now.
So you're expressing yourself and your feelings.
Absolutely.
Okay, you're not keeping them bottled up.
Absolutely.
And-
Not bottled up.
Yes.
I mean,
What would you say to veterans out there, particularly African American veterans, that are bottling their emotions and things up? Because I've noticed that, particularly as veterans get older, that the weight of their experiences, the trauma, the PTSD, seems to have a bigger toll on them.
More anxiety is associated with more anxiety, more anger build up. You got to have a release. You got to have an outlet in order not to allow that stuff to just build up and take control over you. You must take control over it.
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
And
And this
find
is
a-
coming from a medical profession. Yes,
That's
absolutely.
why she's here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's important for the veterans, to seek out help, attend some of the workshops that are available to us. I encourage you to pursue this effort over at Rush. I like it. The young brother who is working with me. I mean, he's half my age, and in our first session, we had this long conversation about him being qualified to counsel me, and he understood. But the exchange has been great. I see we got a finger waving in the other room.
We're running out of time, so we gotta continue this conversation. Wanted to get more involved, more questions about your community involvement, Sel, because I know you've done a lot, particularly with trying to get Chicago cleaned up. You've done a lot of work with that. We want to talk about that next time you come back on our show.
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys for coming in. Thanks for being my first live guest since Cliff Kelley was here. I did an interview with him years ago. Sandra Webb-Booker, retired colonel, combat support, civil affairs, 66 hotel nurse, member of National Women's Veterans United, and of course, U.S. Army veteran and former Dorie Miller Post 915 member, America's Heroes Group ambassador, Sel Dunlap. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all your words.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good.
This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank's Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group, this time with our partner, NCHV, the National Coalition of Homeless Veterans. Today is Saturday, April 29th, 2023. April is Sexual Assault, Minority Health, and Autism Awareness Month. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Clement, the co-host, Army National Guard veteran. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, but filling in, of course, is Shakaya in the office, in our studio control room, and also our technical producer today. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions, and we have our partners on the line with us today. That is Catherine Monet. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the National Coalition of Homeless Veterans, and Ralph Cooper, the Community and Residential Veteran Services Coordinator of Cloudbreak Houston, LLC, and co-founder of the National Coalition of Homeless Veterans. And we have a panelist with us, Lisa Lieberman. She's a Vice President of Communications at Mazone. We're talking about food insecurity, something that has been important these days as the price of food has gone up tremendously due to inflation over the last year or so, last year and a half or so. And now we want to talk about what we can do about it and how there are certain things that are being done about it. So, Mr. Cooper, lead us off. Tell us what is going on. Can you hear us, Mr. Cooper?
I can.
Okay, perfect.
Can you hear me?
Hear you great. So tell us what is happening today and what is your organization doing on this topic, and what do we need to know about this topic right now?
Well, as you know or may not know, that we have approximately 500 previously homeless veterans in our facilities. And one of the real big issues that the VA, who has some clinical social workers and caseworkers on our property working with our veterans, know that food, healthy food, is so important for the men and women who are coming off of the streets and out of homelessness. Need to have this food on a regular basis. And I was so pleased to hear that the Rockefeller Foundation and the VA had gotten together and want to do something about this. And Houston is one of the cities that, one of the number one cities that have been selected. And the VA in Houston with Dr. Crowley, who heads up the homeless programs for the VAs in Houston, is working closely with them to provide the assistance that veterans need so that they can purchase good, healthy food. I believe veterans are going to be getting $100. I just don't know the sequence. I'm hoping that Lisa can shed some light on that.
Lisa, so when I looked up Mazon. I saw it was a great quote I like about what you had on your website. It says, Mazon is not a Jewish response to hunger. It is the Jewish response to hunger. And you talk a lot about interfaith. Tell us about some of the work you're doing and trying to solve this issue of food insecurity.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Hey, you're great.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you so much for having me and having Mazon on this show. Yeah, Mazon is a Jewish response to hunger. We have been around for almost 40 years. And really the whole contention is that our values, our Jewish values, which really, for me, I think translate very clearly into American values, lead us to an end for hunger regardless of a person's circumstance. We've really been committed for all of those nearly 40 years to policy solutions that address the root causes of hunger and not just Band-Aid approaches of helping someone in that moment, which obviously is so important. If someone is looking for food today, they need to have access to food today. But really making sure that people are not in the situation where they're facing hunger and not able to feed themselves or their families. And this is true today for far too many veterans. I'm sure we're going to get into some of the statistics, but just a few. We know that about 1.2 million veterans receive assistance, federal nutrition assistance from SNAP, which used to be called food stamps. Now it's referred to as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. But this statistic of 1.2 million, that really only tells part of the story because we fear and we have data that suggests that many, many more, potentially, 1 in 4 of those veterans in need of food assistance is not receiving the food that they can access, the benefits they can access to help put food on the table. So we call this a SNAP participation gap, and we're really concerned about this among veterans. This is where assistance is within reach, but it's left on the table for hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of low-income veterans who deserve assistance and have fought bravely for this country.
Wow, you just mentioned 1.2 million veterans that are getting food stamps or having food insecurity. So that means it's just doing the math in my head, that means it's twice the rate of what the national average for food insecurity is. And according to the USDA, 10.2% of households face food insecurity. Veterans are 7.4 times more likely, or 7.4% more likely to face food insecurity. And these are working age veterans.
Correct. Yeah, and we're concerned. There's a lot of different studies that suggest that certain populations among veterans face higher rates of food insecurity. So, for instance, I think it's like 27% of veterans of the wars of Iraq and Afghanistan struggle to put food on the table, and that is certainly more than double the national rate. We're concerned about some other subsets like female veterans face very high numbers, Native American and other veterans of color, LGBTQ plus veterans, and we really need more data for a lot of these populations because, unfortunately, oftentimes policy solutions are not within reach until we have data to show how much of a problem it is. And with this, it's like we can see how many veterans are getting SNAP. As long as the agencies speak with each other, which doesn't always happen, but it's getting better. But we're concerned that, if someone goes to a food pantry, they're not being asked, are you a veteran? Are you currently serving? Are you in the reserve? It's a no questions asked situation. So that's not a place for data collection. So unfortunately, we don't entirely know the full scope of this problem.
Now, Ms. Monet, what can you tell us about what veterans can do? And also, can you give us more color on the numbers and how veterans can get help using the VA resources and also some of the things that are out there and some of the things that your organization is doing to solve hunger? And by the way, did I make sure I got this right? 'Cause I'm reading off my script here. Ralph Cooper, are you the co-founder of the National Coalition of Homeless Veterans?
I am, sir.
Okay, wow.
One of there's 4 of us living that are co-founders.
Wow. So, Ms. Monet, tell us what are you guys doing at the National Coalition of Homeless Veterans to try to tackle this issue, and how are you partnering with the VA?
Well, one of the things that's really interesting about this issue is that when you dive into the population of veterans who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness, what you see is that even the folks who are getting SNAP assistance about 50% of them still report that they're facing food insecurity and they're still hungry. And so one of the things that we really focused in on during the pandemic was trying to find more flexibility for VA to be able to offer limited assistance to veterans. And one of the things that manifested into during, I think, the CARES and Rescue Plan era was this one statutory authority where VA could buy food, they could pay for transportation, they could connect veterans with cell phones, tents, let them live on VA Medical Center campuses, do a lot of that stuff. But that is actually disappearing on May 11th at the end of the public health emergency. And so we've been working pretty hard to get some of those provisions and a lot of other big priorities that we have too extended. And we've been seeing limited success, if I'm being really honest.
You said it hasn't been a success, or has it been a success? What was that last part you said?
Well, so I think the program has been a success, right? I mean, VA has reported over 40,000 veterans have come in and gotten assistance. A lot of them have been connected with food and have been put up in hotels, which is really great for outreach workers, right? When you think about the fact that you can actually meet a need that a veteran has today, build up that credibility, and have them in one centralized place where you can come back, you can connect with them, and you can continue to engage them on the path to housing in a way that is just a lot more challenging to do if they're out on the streets trying to figure out where to go. But because this program is slated to go away on May 11th, we've been really working hard with our partners in Congress to get it extended more permanently or even on a short-term basis, just to make sure that veterans who are still out there can access the services and supports that they need, including food.
All of the food organizations like the Northwest Indiana Food Bank, the Chicago Bank here, all of them, all the places that I've talked to, they're all saying that they're seeing more people than ever that are needing food assistance because of the price of groceries have gone up so much. And then on top of that, people are working and the employment numbers look good, but the wages are not quite up to par with inflation. So Mr. Cooper, what is an alternative for veterans so they can try to get help and get some of the things done? What needs to change, I guess I should say, in order for veterans to not find themselves in these situations?
Well, I can tell you that the property that we have, it's at 4640 Main Street and 4700 Travis Street in Houston, Texas. We have 3 buildings. We have one building that we have 286 units. Another building we have 190 units. Another building we have 57 units. And they're not all previously homeless veterans, but 90% of them are. We also have a program on property called U.S. Vets, Inc., and they do a grant and per diem program, which the VA is the sponsor of. And they feed individuals coming off the street that get housed in their program. It's like 2 to 3 to a unit, and they get 3 squares a day. So, when I did the radio show on NPR, I mentioned to them that one of the things I hope happens with the Houston operation is that they contact U.S. Vets and any other program that is servicing previously homeless veterans to ensure that they have the quality of food that they need so that these individuals' 3 square meals can be healthy 3 square meals.
And that's one thing I want to talk about as well, which is nutrition. 4 square meals, but also healthy 4 square meals. I like that, that you said that. I saw on the Veterans Health Administration website, they talked about veteran health equity. There's a podcast actually called the Veteran Health Equity Podcast, and they had an episode called Preventing Diabetic Foot Ulcers. So eating healthy is important. So Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about the importance of trying to help people who are also in situations where they don't have access to maybe grocery stores, or they don't have access to a lot of they're in food deserts, or they're in places where they're eating the easiest thing they can get a hold of, which might be chips and sodas and all that kind of unhealthy stuff. How do you educate people to think about eating more healthy and using their benefits to eat healthier?
Yeah, you bring up a really important point. And not only is it often hard to, sometimes unhealthy food is the cheaper option, or sometimes you don't get to pick and choose what kind of food you pick up at the food pantry, because there are limited options, and it's easier to store and have donations, frankly, of food that's non-perishable, and canned foods and boxed mac and cheese and things like that. You're not in a position to be able to pick and choose or necessarily get fresh produce. You also mentioned the concept of food deserts, which is a huge problem, especially in Indian country and in rural communities. We actually have started, many anti-hunger groups and advocates have started to use the term food apartheid.
Wow.
Because it's a desert is a natural phenomenon, and there actually are systemic issues at play, we think, of why some people don't have access to fresh foods on a regular basis. But another really important thing to note with this part of the conversation is that food insecurity is directly associated with negative, costly health outcomes, and there is a real cost, obviously, for people's lives, but even to the American public. And we're talking healthcare costs. Of course, there are issues of obesity and diabetes-related illnesses, even like stress and mental health issues. I was listening to the segment just before this, and there are real chronic issues that can take place and often do. I'm just looking at, there was a 2019 study. This is obviously before COVID, and I think everything has gotten worse and been exposed since COVID. But in 2019, food insecurity results in an average healthcare cost of $1,834 per adult in the U.S. So I think there's a real point to be made that food insecurity leads to increased costs and poorer outcomes. And there's a really important role for the VA health system to play. And I think it's notable that they are really doing great work, and there's more to be done, certainly, but they're starting to screen for food insecurity, and they have started this, and that is huge progress.
Is it Lisa or Eliza?
It's Liza.
Okay.
I'll answer to either one, but it's Liza.
I just want to make sure. So when you, how did the Maison get connected to the VA?
That's a good question. I'm not sure how we first got connected to the VA. I have to find out the exact history there, but we've been doing this work with veteran communities, and actually currently serving military communities is kind of obviously related, but a little bit of separate policy issues sometimes, for over a decade. And as I said, Maison has been around for about 40 years, and within the last 10 to 12 years, we've identified a few populations, among them are veterans and military families, that face unique barriers to food insecurity. Obviously, as you mentioned, the USDA figures 1 in 10 Americans today is facing food insecurity. It's a huge national problem. But there are some communities that we've identified that face unique barriers within that crisis. And we've identified some policy solutions, quick fix, what should be quick fixes, but in today's political climate, nothing is a quick fix, that we've really zeroed in on. So we've developed a relationship with the VA. Our office in Washington happens to be 2 blocks away, but I don't think that's how we forged the connection in the first place. And now we've actually begun a really productive, I think we have a lot of thoughts on how the VA can do their job better, and we have a very productive relationship with them, and they've developed some incredible resources and working groups, and there really is a commitment to address this issue from within the VA. We've also seen a lot of incredible efforts from this administration, frankly. And there's a lot of energy for this issue on Capitol Hill. People are starting to understand that this is a big problem, and no one should be facing food insecurity in this country. As we say, in this land of plenty, there should be plenty for everyone. But certainly those who fight for our country and who have literally given the utmost sacrifice, those people and their families should not be wondering where they're going to find their next meal.
So, Ms. Monet, so back to you. So, I wanted to know from what you understand. You mentioned that a lot of the programs are expiring that exist today, currently through the VA. So, what will be left from the VA as far as their help to try to conquer this problem with food insecurity? And what would you like to see them do besides maybe extend the programs that are expiring? What else could the VA be doing in order to help veterans and help the communities?
Well, so there are a lot of pandemic-specific programs that are expiring, but the mainstay programs will still be there. And it's my understanding that VA just recently opened up an Office of Food Insecurity to help all veterans really address those issues. My understanding is that office is still kind of new, right? And they've got some pilot things like the program that they're running down in Houston. But I think there's probably a lot more that they could do, not only to provide food in terms of here are canned goods and fresh foods from the voluntary service or whatever part of VA can help out. But in terms of even just helping folks connect to SNAP, right, and being able to process those applications and partner with their, local SNAP office or whatever to really qualify veterans into the program. I do think when you're looking at veterans who are experiencing homelessness, right, oftentimes when you're thinking about how you connect them to housing, it's just so much more complicated because life is more complicated when you're outside, when you're thinking about how you find them, how you get them connected to the benefits application, how they find apartments. And I'd imagine the same is true of food, right? How do you get them connected to SNAP? How do you make sure that they have even transportation to go somewhere where they can buy the food? And then if they're unsheltered, where do they keep it? There's no refrigeration. How do you ensure that they've got what they need to stay healthy? And so I think there's probably a lot that they could really be thoughtful about in terms of really integrating food into some of the programs and the approach that they're taking to homelessness, because, housing instability and food insecurity often exist side by side, right, as families and people are really making the hard choices about their budget and the money that they have. And so I do think there needs to be a lot more connectivity at VA.
I noticed that the hospital I go to, that they started giving out, they have like pantries on different floors. And there is and I'm not sure if it's donated by people that go to the hospital or if the hospital is purchasing the food, but they have these pantries. This shows basically what just free food, and there's a sign that says if you need food, feel free, grab what you want to grab. Mostly canned goods, things like that. Do you know if the VA has done anything like that in any of the facilities? This is a question for all three of you, because I'm not sure if anybody has an answer to this question. But have you seen anything like this at a VA facility? Also, what do people do? Because you mentioned how hard it is for someone homeless, but what about people that live in rural areas who they're not close to a major city or major food bank or something along those lines? How do they get access to food and healthy food? Anybody can answer that question, because I don't even know if we have an answer for that question.
Well, I don't know about
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Cooper first.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about the whether the VA has pantry facilities right within the hospital itself. However, we have a facility, and we have a very small pantry that we hooked up with along with US Vet. But we do have access, and we utilize transportation to take our veterans to food pantries and food outlets that can allow them to get them. a lot of what you're talking about too is it's canned goods and other long shelf life stuff. We have produce that comes to our facility every Friday, so people can actually go to the truck and get vegetables and fresh produce. So that's a big issue. And we also school some of our veterans about the canned goods because they're laden with salt and all that stuff to preserve them. You can actually wash the canned goods off, and use a strainer. Wow. And that'll help somewhat, but that's not going to substitute for fresh produce.
Wow, I didn't know about that. I never thought about that. Rinsing off your canned goods, so that way it can make it a little bit fresher, I guess, or less salty, I guess, or maybe less tainted. Liza, do you have any knowledge on that?
Yeah, the VA has done quite a few partnerships with food pantries. I think several, certainly VA headquarters has partnerships, but then I think a lot of the local offices, they're really public-private partnerships at VA facilities around the country. Another thing we've worked with them on that we're really proud of is to implement what's called the Hunger Vital Signs Screener to identify food insecure veterans who come into VA facilities from the healthcare side. And again, and we're actually advocating that we expand that, and that we can make sure that those people who are on VA facilities, the piece that isn't always happening, I think it is at some VA facilities, but we're hoping that they can expand what's referred to as on-site SNAP eligibility. So that program, the food stamp program I mentioned, a lot of veterans don't know that they're eligible for that, or they think it's not for them, or they think, there's a very proud culture, especially among veterans. This is not for me. Someone needs it more than I do. But actually, SNAP is an eligibility program. It's an entitlement program. It's available to anyone who needs it in this country. And so I think there's a lot of people that are leaving benefits on the table, frankly. The other thing I wanted to mention, what was the one other thing I wanted to mention?
About 1 minute left.
I was going to say another thing that my zone has been very committed to. As I mentioned, we're very proud to be working with the VA. We're also really committed to finding and helping those who are outside of the VA system, which is another big problem. But those are people that might not go in and be screened in a setting like this. But we've started a partnership with this organization called Psych Armor that some of you are probably aware of, and that's trainings for people who work with veterans and caretakers and veterans themselves to kind of make sure that they're socialized around the idea of SNAP, and they've heard of it, and they know the fact that SNAP is an entitlement program. And there are other programs too, by the way, other USDA nutrition assistance programs that like the WIC program for women and infants and children.
Let me cut you off right there because we're running out of time. Can you give us one website where you could find all of these resources for food sources?
For us, I will say myzone.org/veterans or myzone.org/psycharmor.
All right. We're running out of time, so Ms. Monet, I'll have to get to you next time when you come back. I'm going to lead off with you because I want to ask you some questions. This is America's Heroes Group. We appreciate all you guys' time.
Thank you.
This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank's Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
We have in our Chase bags, we have a care package of hygiene, we have shaving equipment, we have razors, and for the women we have the same personal hygiene items for them as well. And we want to say thank you for their service. This is Chase Bank. Thank you very much. People in the neighborhood, free haircuts, and service, and food. Look good. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Thank you, ma'am. Okay.
On behalf of Cliff Kelley, America's Heroes Group, we sincerely thank Chase Bank for coming where it matters to help homeless veterans have a hot meal today and a care package. We are sincerely grateful for the partnership.
Welcome to America's Heroes Group. Hear your voice where we connect the disconnected intentionally.
Who is Cliff Kelley, the governor of talk radio, the icon of radio throughout the world.
Chauncey Spencer II and I, again, share a special relationship. His late great father, Tuskegee Airman Chauncey E. Spencer, took me as a child on my first airplane ride.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is something that people need to see. Often we don't, do the things to show how great our people are. It changes the paradigm of how people think about us, about the collective consciousness of what it means to be us.
And we've been having great conversations about trying to get more African Americans into aviation. And we got a bill that we're trying to get passed that would allow the Pell Grant to be used to help finance aviation education.
This is where I started with this entire conversation by saying if it were not for America's Heroes Group, I would have given up. So I want to get all my accolades out the way on behalf of America's Heroes Group. Ms. Glenda, thank you. Thank you for encouraging me to press on. I would encourage you all to support this organization. One thing for sure, America's Hero Group is out there. Ms. Glenda will take the time. Ms. Glenda Smith will take the time to listen to you and to steer you in the direction that you need to go.
Thank you for watching another episode of America's Heroes Group, where we provide education about resources and information for our veterans, military, and their family.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group. This time our roundtable honoring World War II Navy veteran Harry Belafonte. Today is Saturday, April 29, 2023. April is Sexual Assault, Minority Health, and Autism Awareness Month. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts on the production. And of course, our technical producer and studio engineer today and filling in as an executive producer is Shakaya. Thank you for your service today. We have a panelist on the line with us. That's Danny K. Davis, the Honorable Illinois 7th Congressional District Congressman and America's Heroes Group Advisory Board member, and Kirkland Burke, U.S. Navy veteran and military historian. We're going to talk about honoring the life and legacy of World War II Navy veteran Harry Belafonte, a personal friend of Cliff Kelley. How you doing, Mr. Davis? Honorable Davis. Can you hear us? We got some silence right now, so I'm going to go to Kirkland. Mr. Burke, can you hear us?
Hello.
There you are.
This is Kirkland.
How you doing?
Oh, I'm enjoying one of the best days of my life, and I hope you do the same.
I appreciate that. So we had a sad passing this last Tuesday. We had the passing of well, many people don't realize is an actual World War II veteran, Navy veteran, sailor, veteran Harry Belafonte. So what types of things would you tell us as a historian about Mr. Belafonte and also his naval service?
Well, I know he dropped out of high school during the war to join the Navy, and I unfortunately I don't know what rate he held in the Navy, but I do know he was eventually stationed at Port Chicago, California, and he was sent there shortly after the disaster. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I've read a little bit about that. Tell us about the Port Chicago 50.
Port Chicago was an ammunition loading station. They loaded the ammunition onto the ships that were taking part in the Pacific theater of war. And loading ammunition is an extremely dangerous operation. That and refueling are probably the most dangerous operations that are carried on the ship. Loading ammunition is a all-hands, what they call an all-hands working party, and it's all-hands working party. Everybody is involved in handling the ammunition except the captain. The one thing about those shells, though, especially like illuminating shells, they are extremely volatile. If you drop them, they could go off.
Wow.
Most of the sailors that were working loading the ammunition onto the ships, they were black Americans. They were not trained in loading ammunition. They gave them no training, gave them no special equipment, no special gloves or anything. All the things that they should have done, it was not done. It eventually led to an explosion there that killed 320 people. That was the worst disaster on U.S. soil during the war.
Wow.
And most of them killed were black Americans. And then shortly after that, as the smoke cleared, they turned around and wanted them to go in and do the cleanup in terms of removing debris and looking for, basically they were looking for body parts, because a very small number were actually found intact. And the Port Chicago incident, what happened was there was a group told to go to continue the operation of reloading after that. They refused until they were properly trained. They were threatened with being charged with mutiny and everything. The bottom line, out of that, some went back to work. 50 didn't. They were the Port Chicago 50. And they were eventually court-martialed, given dishonorable discharges, and received sentences. You know, they were sentenced to hard labor at Leavenworth. And that's the NAACP protested. They even went as far, they went to FDR, they went to Eleanor Roosevelt. They never got that reversed. That's the Port Chicago incident. It's Port Chicago, California.
Right.
And that location now is Concord, California.
And I remember that I read something about Belafonte. He described it as a miscarriage of justice, and this is a quote from him, the largest mass trial in naval history and a national disgrace. But what else do you have as far as...
Right, and he was very active in protest about going back in that when he went there. He seems like from that point, I don't know what he did prior to that, but it seems like at that point he became very committed to civil rights, and then evolved into human rights activist, and it kind of followed him through there.
Wow.
And I don't know if it had been mentioned, you know, he was very instrumental in organizing the celebrities, the Hollywood celebrities and recording artists for the March on Washington in 1963.
Cliff Kelley was a good friend of Harold Belafonte, and he would tell us stories. Sometimes he would take us out to dinner. I remember him telling us a story that at one point Dr. King actually was basically broke for the most part. When he was living here in Chicago. And Harold Belafonte, out of his own pocket, donated money to help him continue the work he was doing in civil rights.
Right. After he was assassinated, Harry Belafonte actually had taken care of putting aside funds for the children's education. He also was right there. You know, after he was assassinated, remember, well, I don't know if you were old enough to be around then, but they did go back and march in Memphis, and Mrs. King went with Abernathy, and right there, Harry Belafonte was right there next to, I believe it was Yolanda, the oldest daughter, leading the march, and they wanted to finish what he had started.
Wow.
But like the March on Washington, he got, naturally he had Sidney Poitier with him, and also, believe it or not, one of the people that was very instrumental in helping get Hollywood celebrities there was Charlton Heston. And they had people like Paul Newman was there, Sammy Davis Jr., Marlon Brando, Rita Moreno, Burt Lancaster, Joanne Woodward. This was Hollywood royalty at that time. Diane Carroll, Bob Dylan was there, Peter, Paul, and Mary, Joan Baez, Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis. We know they were there. And Tony Curtis. This was the elite of Hollywood gathered there. And a lot of that time, the only thing they talk about is Dr. King was there. But he was merely, I shouldn't say merely, but he was a speaker there. There was a whole event. It wasn't just him speaking.
And it was organized by A. Philip Randolph.
Right.
People think that was
and Bayard Rustin. So, and he stayed active in civil rights constantly. He was always helping to fund. I believe he really funded the organization SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, because those groups didn't have any funds.
Wow.
And he was always participating. He was always speaking out for social justice and civil rights. And I kind of separate the two. The civil rights movement dealt with the rights that we should have in this country as Black Americans, guaranteed by the Constitution. Human rights are rights that you have based on the fact that you are a human being on this planet.
Wow.
So there is kind of a difference in those two.
So Mr. Davis, he's not going to be able to join us today, but we do have no less of an important person. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Can you hear us, Glenda? Glenda? It's like we are.
Hello?
There you are.
Yeah. Hey, Sean. How are you?
Pretty good. So
wonderful. Mr. Kirtland, thank you so much for calling in and giving a total perspective of who Mr. Harry Belafonte was, not to only as a civil rights advocate, but he served this country. And I was sort of shocked when I was looking at the news of his passing that no news outlet really mentioned that. I'm like, okay, did you not know, or was it not important to you? So we as a country are really going to have to understand the importance of veterans and the fact that they have served. And they earn every right to be recognized, period. So, Mr. Kirtland, thank you so much.
When they talked about hidden figures, we have hidden history.
Yes, we do, sir.
Supposedly, when Clint Eastwood made his film about the soldiers at Iwo Jima,
right, sir, right,
and he didn't include any black soldiers. And when they brought it up, he made the statement that he didn't think that any of them were there, and he said it because all the war movies he had seen, he never saw any black soldiers in it.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of we have been omitted from history. And these things, and I hope people that are listening, if you have children, grandchildren, tell them that if you don't tell them, nobody's going to know in a minute.
Now, Glenda, I wanted to switch gears a little bit because you and your family, you had a person that passed away recently. And tell us about your story and what happened. Like, so I know you're out of state right now. You're normally with us here in the studio on a Saturday.
Right.
You know, remember the days we used to drive all the way up from, was it Tennessee or Kentucky?
Kentucky.
She drove all the way from Kentucky to do the show on Friday night. After the show, would drive back to Kentucky to take care of her mom.
Yeah, because at that time she was, my mom had stage 3 cervical cancer, and she was going through chemo and radiation. So, yeah. But to just end off of what Mr. Kirtland just said, that's why America's Heroes Group was started. Cliff and I got an understanding, and I praise God for giving me the epiphany to share with Cliff that veterans weren't not really talked about, weren't being discussed, particular black veterans. So I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Harry Belafonte twice at St. Sabino during Black History Month. The first time, I told him from my heart, thank you for your support, your time, your sacrifice from your family in supporting Dr. King and the civil rights movement protesters. Because now let me segue to my dad. Growing up in Mississippi in poverty and Jim Crow, he didn't have a chance to become educated like we have now. They were sharecroppers, so they were working to put food in their mouth. He picked cotton as a young boy to help provide in that way. As he grew older, he became more aware of inequality and things that were happening to them in particular in Mississippi, and he decided to take a stance. Back, and we're talking about the 60s, when it was ripe, raw, and very, very, very dangerous. He took that stand on behalf of everybody, himself, his community, his family, everybody else, and protested directly with Dr. King. Directly, he was there. Directly, he went to jail. Directly, he was involved until he decided to come north, like so many blacks did, that black belt, that they called it. He moved from there, came to Detroit. He moved in with his brother, his older brother, and started working at a company named Fitzsimmons. He got married to my stepmom. They had 2 children. I'm the one of 3. I'm the oldest. My dad was determined that his family would see better days than he had in his humble beginning. I'm college educated. My sister's college educated, and so is my brother. So to that fact, we're talking about a man that had limited education, picked cotton in our cotton field, came north, and decided that was my beginning. That's not going to be my end. So he worked 30 years at Fitzsimmons. It's an automotive parts company. Became a union steward, number 1. Number 2, he started and ran a successful landscaping business for over 30 years. And I learned he had over 250 customers. Number 3, he was such a family man to the fact that the nieces and nephews looked at him as either their big brother or their father figure, and they knew if a financial crisis came up, they could call on him and he would show up. Not only for them, but he did that also for sisters and brothers. So he retired after working those 30 years and running that successful landscaping business part-time. He retired down. And then he had real estate. He was an owner, to my understanding, through my brother, of 14 houses. So there are no excuses, because my dad set the standard for my brother, my sister, myself as a no-nonsense, and I mean he was that disciplinarian. No nonsense, no excuses. I'm not going to listen to the BS, because if I could do it from back then with nothing, you all can't come to me with that. He supported education. He made sure we got what he could not get, because living in the South, denied housing, denied education, denied everything because of Jim Crow. Segregated to the point there was no schooling. So based off what he could get, he came north, and look how God blessed him. So we celebrated him yesterday. And then to listen to the community people say, when some of their family members would come out of jail or out of prison, they came to Mr. Longstreet and got a job at working in his landscaping company, because what he said to them was, that's your past. I can give you a new start if you want to. I don't care about your past. I care about your present. So if you want a new start, I can work with you. And that's who he was. They spoke so highly of the fact he embraced that community and gave so many of their children jobs through his landscaping services. So we celebrated him. But, of course, it feels like right now like a max, something is standing on my heart. But God.
When did he pass?
So I appreciate God giving him to me for 79 years.
When did he pass away?
Because he didn't suffer. He had a massive heart attack almost 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
We had to decide to unplug him because nothing was functioning and everything was shutting down. So God blessed him to ease out in an easy transition. So
I think it's important.
What more can I say about somebody who I respected, I loved, when I say fear, I mean like the God of fear. Like he didn't try to be buddies and I'm your friend. He was that old-fashioned school dad. I'm your father. I'm not your friend. So all 3 of us knew, don't cross him, because he would not tolerate it. He was no nonsense. If you was doing something constructive, he had your back all the way. But you weren't going to waste his time and you weren't going to waste his money. He was just about the business of being about business. So That's who my dad is. That's who he was. And that's who I celebrate, Sean, because that tough love of not allowing me to give him, especially when I wasn't really focused and really doing what I was supposed to in school, and he didn't tolerate trying to listen to any excuses. You didn't come to him with the, the white man excuse, and he didn't want to hear that. He didn't want to hear that. He wanted to know, what are you going to do and what are you doing? And how are you going to get there? That was the bottom line. So,
just like so many veterans across the country, adversity oftentimes breeds leadership and also breeds that perseverance, that spirit of ownership, and that
absolutely.
That
so
dedication.
I think Mr. Harry Belafonte, because when my dad went to jail, my mom went to jail, my auntie went to jail, and protesting down there, it was his money that bailed them out.
Wow.
It was his money that bailed out any protesters that went to jail during that time. So in a moment of silence, I recognize, I honor Mr. Harry Belafonte and my dad, Mr. Charles Oliver Longstreet Sr.
This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Cliff Kelley, Vietnam veteran, co-founder, and host of America's Heroes Group. We have helped hundreds and thousands of veterans find the resources they needed to move on past trauma, find the services they need to heal, find training, jobs, and housing. That's our mission. To support this mission so that we can continue our work and have even more veteran stories of overcoming and success, we need your help. Right now, please consider making a donation to America's Heroes Group. Dig deep and give what you can to support this mission and help those veterans in need. You can donate through Chase Bank's Zelle app by adding America's Heroes Group as a recipient with our phone number 312-804-5855. 5831. You can donate through PayPal on our website, americashg.org. From the home page, go to donations, or you can go straight to www.americashg.org/donations. And finally, you can send a check to America's Heroes Group, Inc., 155 North Quaker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606.
And welcome back to America's Heroes Group with our roundtable and our partner, the Veterans Health Administration. April is Sexual Assault, Minority Health, and Autism Awareness Month. It's Saturday, April 29th, 2023. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega, Scott Turner Productions, and also Shakaya. She's our studio engineer, our technical producer, and also filling in as our executive producer today. We have a panelist, Michelle Spivak, former Senior Communications Officer for the Veterans Health Administration, Office of Communications, and Kenneth L. Hayward, Masters of Health Administration, U.S. Army Signal Corps veteran and Management Analyst with the Veterans Health Administration Office of Integrated Veteran Care in Washington, D.C. And we're going to talk about the American Red Cross and the things they're doing for veterans, particularly when it comes to blood, because there's a lot of blood going around this country, but we need more of it to keep us going and to keep us alive. We're going to talk about that and all the particulars about that. How you guys doing today?
Nice doing well. Well, thank you. Thank you for having us.
So, Michelle, lead us off. Tell us what is going on with the American Red Cross, and what is our condition as far as the need for blood in America?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for allowing us to talk to you about this very important topic. You know, there is nothing in healthcare that can replace blood. Blood is a unique substance that is needed, and there is no chemical way to derive it. You must have blood for healthcare. Right now, we are in nationwide a really tough position because we don't have enough blood donors. And it all started, of course, pre-COVID. But COVID made everything a lot worse. Do you know that only 3% of Americans are blood donors, but 60% of Americans would qualify to give if they would just step up and give? So we are together, Kenneth and I, and our team at the Department of Veterans Affairs that are working on the Roll Up Your Sleeve campaign. We're reaching out to your audience today to encourage them to consider being blood donors.
So, Kenneth, how did you get involved with the Red Cross as a volunteer, and what personally led you to make that commitment to be a blood donor?
Well, actually, my first interaction with the American Red Cross was back in 1995, while I was actually still serving in the United States Army when my unit was deployed to Operation Uphold Democracy in Haiti. Unfortunately, my mother passed away during that time, but I received a Red Cross letter, an emergency letter, and I was on the first plane smoking back to Charleston, South Carolina. So that was my first interaction with the American Red Cross. And I was so impressed with the, again, no questions were asked, no monies were asked for. They made sure I got home, and actually they made sure I got back to, at that point in time, I was actually stationed in Hawaii. So that was my initial interaction with the American Red Cross. And since that time, initially it became just a must that I donated financially. So I would use the, through CFC, I started donating through to the American Red Cross. But fast forward many years up until present day, I began donating just because, again, just knowing and realizing they say when you know better, you do better, right? So just knowing the crisis that the country was in regards to the lack of blood, particularly African Americans and Black people needing that blood supply to be amped up. I began donating. And so that's how my volunteerism became more active in that capacity. And then while serving as the chair of the Health and Wellness Committee with the 100 Black Men out of Baltimore, our president was contacted by the executive director for the American Red Cross of Central Maryland. And again, that covers that Baltimore City, Baltimore County area. And so we were approached I personally was approached with the invitation to join the board of directors for American Red Cross. And that's what I did. And so again, that just kind of amped up my donating. But then that actually turned into me spearheading through Blacks in Government, through, at that point in time, through 100 Black Men of Maryland and several of the local churches to actually spearhead it, probably about 7 or 8 blood drives.
Wow. So Michelle, can you tell us a little bit about what veterans can do to try to combat this shortage? Because blood is definitely necessary, and particularly it's very alarming if you go to the hospital and they have a shortage of blood. That you just mentioned it. That's the most critical building block where you really can't go anywhere without blood.
Sure. So I want to say first, it's time for young people to step up. The age of most blood donors is parents and grandparents, to tell you the truth. We don't have enough young people. I also want to tell people that American Red Cross is one of 2 major organizations that collect blood. There's also an organization called America's Blood Centers, and that's an umbrella group for hundreds and hundreds of collection sites across the country. America's Blood Centers actually collects more blood than American Red Cross, but people don't know enough about them. So I want to urge people to consider, number 1, giving blood, and number 2, veterans. You've always saved us, and you've always been there for us. I ask you again to step up and help us by donating blood. And how do you do it? Well, the first thing you do is you check with your local VA hospital and find out when they're having their next blood drive. If they are having a blood drive that you can attend, I hope you will do so. If they aren't, you can go to the website for either American Red Cross or America's Blood Centers, and you can find out if there's a local blood drive going on in your community, convenient to your schedule. And if you go there and you say you're going to give blood for the Roll Up Your Sleeve campaign, that's hashtag Roll Up Your Sleeve VA, your donation will be attributed to this major campaign for veterans. But I want to make clear that blood goes to everybody. It's whoever needs it first.
Wow. Now I know there's a lot of places popping up that are paying people to like sell blood and sell plasma to hospitals or wherever they sell it to. Do you know anything about that, and how does that compare with donating blood to as far as being able to get the blood to where it needs to go?
I really don't know too much about that, so I can't speak to that. I would hope that people who are in a situation where they feel they have to donate blood for money can find other resources, and I hope that our communities can help those sorts of people, because we wouldn't want people to be putting themselves at any risk at all because they're that desperate for money. So I can't speak to that, but I would urge anybody who feels, particularly veterans, who feel like they need to sell their blood, please go to a VA and please find out what resources are there to help you.
And so, Kelley, can you add more to that, and also tell us a little bit about what roles that some of the organizations you participate in? Because I know you're participating in a lot of different organizations in helping the Red Cross collect blood, but through donation. So tell us about that, and also how important is that to you?
It's very important, and just like Michelle said, that there are several different ways that, especially veterans, because we're always, as veterans, we're used to serving, so we're always looking to do our part and help the community and help this country in any way that we possibly can. And so most times we'll once we either retire or just transition from the military, we're joining social organizations, especially VSOs, VAV, VFW, religious organizations, ethnic and civic organizations. And so those organizations form as the basis for a lot of the work that's being done on the volunteer side through the American Red Cross in regards to blood donors, and that's just simply hosting a blood drive. That's one of the major ways that veterans and again any kind of other social organizations can do their part by hosting a blood drive, and they don't even have to because I know one of the first things when I started not necessarily hosting, but actually spearhead blood drives. It's just a matter of actually finding some place to actually would hold the blood drive. And so that's another huge issue after since COVID. A lot of places, because most times when the blood drives were held, they were held in schools, they were held in churches, local gymnasiums, and so those types of places were closed due to COVID. And so now, when we would find a church that was willing to open up their doors to us, or and then again, when you're talking about schools and publicly, facilities that had oversight with city and local government, those kind of a different nature, so it was harder. But again, going back to blacks in government, going back to 100 Black Men, going back to the Divine Nine, going back to any of these other service organizations, again, DAV, VFW. The last time I gave here in Maryland, I gave at the Elks, one of the Elks Lodge in Maryland. So all of these organizations, again, and the great thing about it is all you have to do is show up, right? And even as an organization, the Red Cross will do everything else. They'll have all the staff. They'll bring the last blood drive we did that Michelle helped us with at VA headquarters. All we had to do was just show that was super, super successful. And again, all we had as volunteers, as big as blacks in government, all we had to do was show up. They even had individuals to serve as registered. The only thing that we had to do was as volunteers is as like at the refreshment table, when donors came, completed their donation, give them some water, make sure they sat down, and for the 15 minutes that they needed to be refreshed before we knew that they were good to leave. So it really is not that much of a burden when you're talking about organizations hosting. And again, you can host the blood drive, but you don't even have to necessarily use your own facility. Like Blacks in Government, we don't have a specific location, but again, we were able to use the central office. Through 100 Black Men, we were able to use a couple of the churches in Baltimore, churches in Townsend. So again, it's just a matter of just reaching out to local facilities, pastors, local leaders, and just letting them know what your organization is trying to do. And I guarantee, especially now since we're the country has opened back up, a lot of the same facilities that were once closed before are now willing and able to allow organizations to come back and to utilize their facilities for free. And it's not like they're asking for any money most times in your schools and again church conference rooms and things of that nature.
Now, Kenneth, you are a healthcare policy expert, essentially. You write, analyze, and interpret policy, and you also have a focus on equity and diversity. How does that play into the scarcity of blood, and also when you break it down between African Americans, Latin Americans, Asians, Caucasians, how does that play into the socioeconomic part of the necessary, important health need of blood and getting blood to the communities, getting more Black people to give blood?
Well, the numbers don't lie. And so all we do is we put out the numbers that, the percentage of African Americans that, are here in the, in terms of population here in the country, versus the number. And again, we're talking about sickle cell. Sickle cell month is coming up in September. So we're talking about sickle cell disease. That's a disease that primarily, attacks, those of, Black and of African descent. And so just putting that message out there, and then, putting out the message that it's more than likely that someone of your own ethnicity, you can be a better match when you're talking about blood donations, when you're talking about blood transfusions. You just kind of put that out there. And when they hear those stories about how important it is for, because again, if you know better, you do better. And then it's just the education too, right? We allow the experts from the actual, from the Red Cross, the paid staff, those who, have all the real numbers and statistics, and do this on a daily basis. We allow them to to do webinars, to provide us with information and put the word out there, and then we just serve as that conduit to try to facilitate that information and really just kind of stress the fact that how important. Again, I forgot at least one out of, I can't, again, I don't want to quote anything that I don't, statistically, but the vast majority of every American will need blood at some point in their lives. We're not just talking about blacks, we're not talking about race, ethnicity, we're not talking about color or anything. Everybody at some point in their lives, unfortunately, if not yourself, definitely somebody within your family is going to need blood. And so we just try to hammer that point home. And it's really not about policy. It's really not about it's not about it's not about the government. It's not about anything that that's super it's not rocket science.
Right. It's just a fact of the matter. You're going to probably at some point in your life, if you live 78 years, hopefully, you're going to end up in a hospital one day. You might need surgery. Right. Then that's going to be.
And every donation that is given can save up to 3 lives.
Wow.
So you really are a lifesaver when you do this. And let me also add, you cannot get COVID or give COVID from a blood donation. And you can make a blood donation if you've had a tattoo or two. Tattoos do not mean that you can't donate blood. And if you're gay, you can give a donation. So there are a lot of things that people used to believe or that might have been rules way back when. And now we have ways in which we can find out if that person is generally healthy. Yes, they can be a blood donor. And if you can't give blood, I was signed up to give blood at the big blood donation, and my doctor said, not right now because you're going to have some surgery soon. So if you can't, you can always volunteer to help out. You can help find a place for a blood drive. You can do some of the marketing and pitching and sales, the PR for the blood drive. There's always something that you can do. And remember, we're all in it together when it comes to this. So I'm really happy. And first I want to thank Kenneth because I hadn't seen you live and in person, and I'm really
right, exactly.
I want to thank Big for getting on board and holding that blood drive, and I want to encourage everybody else to think about holding a blood drive, sponsoring a blood drive, and stepping up to give blood.
I think that's really important because you mentioned that something that's also, if you don't necessarily have to be the person that gives blood, you could be the person that facilitates, is organizing your friends or organizing an event, maybe at your workplace, to try and give blood and donate blood, because it's such a critical thing. It's something that's so necessary. On the point of sickle cell anemia, 2% have a rare blood type used to treat sickle cell. And then at some point, I guess if you have sickle cell, you're probably going to need blood transfusions to stay alive. Yeah. I guess that since it's so rare, it's really important that we flood the market basically, if we can, with all the different types of blood. Now, I'm not sure if any of you have the answer to this question. I'm not a doctor, and you guys aren't doctors, medical doctors. But I know most people have O positive blood. I'm an O positive person myself. Why is there such a shortage of O positive blood? Because that's the most desired blood type that hospitals and the Red Cross needs.
I don't know why there's a shortage in particular, but that's the universal donor, isn't it?
Yes.
I think that's the universal donor. Yeah. I think just in general that it's one of those things where you sort of expect it's always going to be there, and you count on other people to do it. And right now, we're in a situation where we all have to take a little bit of responsibility to be part of the solution. And to do this on a regular basis, the way Kenneth and his team do, I mean, they do it, what is it, like every 90 days you can give, where you have to build up your...
50, I think it's 56 days, I want to say. Every 56 days, I think you can donate.
Now, is it a
And
good
I would
idea?
love
Go
to
ahead.
see some blood drives on college campuses now that colleges are open.
Mm-hmm.
It would be great to see some younger people. You can give when you're 18 years old or older.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be wonderful if young people would get on board with this.
Does it make a difference if the person is younger or older when you give blood?
No, but you have fewer. As you get older, you have more complicated health issues.
Okay.
So it would be wonderful because most young people are in generally good health, and we would be able to get more blood donations that way.
Okay. And then, it's a good idea for people to see a doctor, but to get maybe pre-screened or qualified to give blood, or can you rely just on the facility you're going to, the Red Cross or whomever, to check to make sure you're healthy enough to give blood?
They're going to ask you a series of questions to screen you when you get to the donation site. And then they oftentimes will also test a little drop of blood. Kenneth, do you want to share how that happened, how that went at the recent blood drive?
Yes, and you're exactly right, Michelle. So there's a comprehensive exam that's done via questionnaire and also via the blood sample that's given, and you get it on the spot. And if there's anything that that they find, like I know one of the individuals wanted to give, but her iron level was low, and so she wasn't able to give. And so we just kind of pick up on things, instantly to allow individuals to know where they are, health-wise, and then, to come back and go back to their primary care provider or physician, kind of seek some advice and guidance on how to get the iron level up so they, next time they present to donate blood, they'll be able to do so. But yeah, there's again, and for COVID, I know a lot of people were concerned, but they were testing. At one point, the Red Cross was testing, doing on-site testing for COVID to make sure that all the individual, the donor, as well as the blood that was being donated was good for to be sent to whatever facility for processing and sending out to those who are in need of the donation.
And I think that's important too, because oftentimes when you do these types of activities, a hidden benefit or a collateral benefit is you find out something about your body that you didn't know before.
Right.
Like if you have COVID or if you have low iron, maybe you're anemic.
Right.
That could be something that's critical. Now
I've seen that.
Wow.
An individual who was just so anemic that and he didn't even realize it that he eventually had to go and start to get and ironically he had to get blood transfusions because his iron was so low. Yes.
Wow.
Yes, but he would not have known that had he not gone to donate blood.
Wow. Now, Kenneth, you're living in Bowie, Maryland now, right?
I am. Yes.
My old stomping grounds. That's where I was born. Not born there, but I was born in D.C. But I grew up. I spent my high school years in Bowie.
Okay.
So if you've gone to Rips over on 197 and 301, Rips the deli.
I actually used to live almost literally behind Rips, off of Governors Bridge Road.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still there all these years. Like this is like 30 years ago.
Oh yeah.
I went over there and tried to apply for a job one time. I was like in middle school or something like that. That was pretty cool. And also, you did you come from Charleston, or were you born?
Born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina.
That's why I was in Fort Jackson. That's where I did my basic and AIT. I did that in Fort Jackson, Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay.
So the world's smaller than we think it is.
Right, exactly.
I also lived in Charleston, South Carolina when I was a kid.
Wow.
Yep, in walking distance to the Citadel. You know the Citadel, right?
Wow.
Oh yeah.
That's
probably off of Rutledge Avenue or somewhere down there.
That's right.
That's right.
So, Michelle, what would you say? What was the one last push you would say to encourage, particularly younger people? And I bring this up not just to just young people in general, but particular service members, because you have people that go into the service are going to be pre-screened for a lot of stuff, right? And we get all the shots, immunizations, and everything like that. Chances are, if you're in the military, you don't have HIV. Chances are you don't have any STDs. Chances are you're in pretty good shape. What would you say to encourage veterans and service members to take advantage of the opportunity to step up and do something really heroic, and also increase this blood supply and solve this shortage problem?
I would say, because I know that veterans really want to support each other, I would say that your fellow veterans need you, that the freezers are running bare, and a lot of hospitals around the country have about 2 days supply, sometimes 3, and that is not enough. So I would ask you to serve your country again by being a blood donor.
Great last words. I appreciate your time and all the things you've told us about, and hope that we get ahead of this and people reach out to the American Red Cross, also reach out to your local organizations, see if you can also become a person who can set up an event to donate blood. So we have Michelle Spitvak, former Senior Communications Officer, Veterans Health Administration, Office of Communications; Kenneth L. Hayward, U.S. Army Signal Corps veteran and management analyst with the Office of Veterans Health Administration, Integrated Veteran Care in Washington, D.C. Thanks for you guys' times.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. We appreciate it. Take care. Bye.
This is
Bye-bye.
America's Heroes Group. We're signing off again one more time on Saturday, 4 to 6 every Saturday. Check out our website, americashg.org. That's americashg.org. And if you have any questions, send it to info@americashg.org. And we can also respond to your questions. And if you want to come on our show and talk about some of the things you're doing for the veteran community, be our guest. Come on. And once again, I get my card out, so I don't memorize all this stuff. The card says, I'm doing Johnny Carson now. The card says that you need to call us at 312-803-2618. That's 312-803-2618. Or go to americashg.org. See our shows on Facebook. See our shows on YouTube. We have an archive of shows that go back many years, and you can find about topics about this topic, other topics, PTSD. Let us know. America's Heroes Group, we're signing off. See you next week.